Thanks to everybody for showing up or tuning in. If you're tuned in on Route29Solutions.org, you can do your usual thing and go to panel meetings, and then under the documents you'll see the agenda as well as the presentation for today's meeting. For those that are here, if you need to take a break, it's down the hall and to the right. If we need to vacate the room for any reason whatsoever, we go back down the steps, out the front door, hang a left, and rally back around in the parking lot down the hill behind this building. Pete did advise me that he was not going to be able to make it today, so that's the only one I heard of. Let's go ahead and do a quick round of introductions. Chip?
Chip Orioles, the Planning District Commission, and MTO.
Morgan Butler, Southern Environmental Law Center. Mark Graham, Albemarle County.
Brad Sheffield, Albemarle County Supervisors.
Everyone, Charlottesville Fashion Square.
Henry Ranching, Express Commerce Consultants.
Allison?
Anthony Thompson,
Dave Covington, VDOT.
Debbie Messina, Philip Chiquette Company. Linda Cullum, VDOT.
Al Jones, VDOT.
Joel Denunzio, VDOT Charlottesville.
Lou Hatter, VDOT Communications.
All righty. Thank you very much, folks. And let's go ahead and get into it. At our last meeting, we had a lower online audience from before, fewer streams and longer average minutes per stream, and that's the way that relationship always looks. So we'll continue to track that for some reason. Had eight emails into the project inbox. One person just didn't like the get around map. We'll leave it at that, and thought it should have been more of an engineering type drawing, but it's not. Two requested some information about the Route 29-250, the Best Buy project. One asked information about a claim. Apparently had hit a pothole or something with the tire. They got directed over to Filtered Choice people, and then a person apparently had some debris that maybe made its way to their property, and I think that got cleared up. There was one email that resulted from a mailer from Albemarle County, and it was just a host of questions or comments about RIO GSI. I think Lou answered some of those, but then we bucked that back over to the county as well. There was one just asking, hey, how do I make these movements? How do I get around during the period May 23rd to September 2nd? And Lou, I think you sent them the get around map and maybe that other MOT map that we had. There was one regarding the number of right turn lanes from RIO West to 29 North in the complete configuration. And this person was suggesting that the next right through lane should also be a right turn lane, but as you all recall, that's not the way it'll work. There'll be one right turn lane from RIO westbound to 29 North. That'll be a near continuous right, with the exception of when a pedestrian activates the pedestrian crossing signal across RIO. There was one regarding milling and paving on Emmett Street, which is a person that had been in touch with Lou previously about the schedule for that, and I think that's been done now as part of the Best Buy project, so that's already complete. There was one email from a high school student that was hoping to get some information from Virginia on speed cameras, and Lou, I think you advised them that we don't have those.
That's something that's one on every traffic light.
No new postings on on the website itself. The project hotline got 2 calls, one regarding directions, kind of the same deal. Hey, how do I get around between May 23rd and September 2nd? And one regarding access to Wendy's, and one of the subcontractors had pinched that access a bit, and I think we got that taken care of, right, Chris? So that's the wrap up for the last couple of weeks on that. In terms of feedback from the last meeting, if you'll recall, we went through all the interim milestones that have to be met in order for the contractor to be complete within that 103-day period. And Kristen asked whether or not pedestrians were included in that interim milestone. And that language that's in italics is also directly from the contract. There's a term in there that all the lanes, the intersection has to be returned to use, and then there's an asterisk, and use is defined in the contract, and use includes pedestrian traffic must be accommodated either in its final location or through the implementation or continuation of pedestrian detours, which shall include facilities meeting or exceeding the requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So pedestrian access, restoring pedestrian access, is a part of the interim milestone. I don't want to speak for Jason, but I think the plan is to have all the pedestrian access in place. But that is right from the contract language and covers, I think, Kristen, the question you brought up. There were some emails exchanged about the design of the ramp at 29-250, and we had some discussion about that last week. But we're just kind of going to wrap that up as part of agenda item 7 to make sure that the record is clear here with respect to that design and the appropriateness of it. We'll just talk about it in a little bit more organized fashion. As part of agenda item 8, we'll take a look at the value of the repurchased bypass right-of-way. We'll look at the value of sales that have closed for the sales of bypass right-of-way. And we'll also tell you what we know about the conservation easements, those 4 easements that were noted in the map. But we'll catch those in item 7 and item 8. Discussion or any suggestions for future agenda items? Chip? Mark?
I shared an email with you earlier. I didn't know if it was going to come up about the edge of lane pavement markings.
Oh, yes.
I didn't know if it was going to come up today or later.
It should have. My bad. I don't think I gave it today.
No problem.
Do you want to bring it up, or can we catch it the
Consider it
26th?
brought up.
Okay. Good. You got it.
All right.
Brad?
Nope, I'm good.
Karen? Henry? Okay. All right. Let's take a look at our milestones, and if you're like me, you always wince at the red, but it's not. It's really not so bad. At the GSI, finishing up the retaining walls and the roadway widening. You've seen some of that shift if you've been through there. I guess that's southbound where it's been shifted over to start making room for the work in the middle. At 29 widening, still wrapping up the gas line relocation as well as the phase 1 grading, drainage, and paving. I came through the widening project this morning and I'm really pleased at the way it looks and the way your work zone looks there, Jason. It's good. Phase 2 grading up to 20%, so there are a lot of things happening there. Berkmar, the right-of-way acquisition is buttoned up now, as is all the clearing north of the river, finishing up about a month ahead of time. The pile driving, the south abutment excavation pile driving done, the north abutment done. So some real progress there on Berkmar. These are things that, you know, aren't wrapped up when they were scheduled, but again, not critical milestone issues that I'm confident will get wrapped up without a problem. The pier construction continues. If you'll recall, I got an early jump on that and continues up to about 30% complete. Hillsdale, right-of-way acquisition done. You remember this. The utility relocation is up to about 25%. I do have some information for you on bids. Bids were due May the 16th on Monday. Comments from bidders, potential bidders, were due the 9th, I believe, on May the 9th. Just as we did when we asked for questions from bidders with RIO, based on those questions, we made a decision, if you'll remember, to give the contractors a bit more time, I think maybe 2 weeks in that case, a bit more time to submit their bids. The city is working today on compiling responses to 40-some questions that came in, and will, after they compile those responses, will put an addendum out answering the questions that were asked. And because of the nature of some of the questions to potentially affect prices, we're going to give the contractors another week. So instead of May the 16th, we'll get bids on May the 23rd. There's no indication that changes the rest of our schedule. It's Hal and Jeanette have, and I presume Tony probably have talked through this, and it's the right thing. It's the right thing to do, and that's what we're going to do. You may be hearing that before some of the other contractors, depending on if any are in the room or listening. So instead of May the 16th, we'll get that addendum out this week, and we'll get bids on May the 23rd. And that's not. It's right. It's the right thing to do. As far as 250, a lot more paving got underway. I know the weather here has not been a friend, but these guys just need to figure that out, and hopefully we get some dry days. The barrier, the work on the sound barrier is almost all finished. Talking today, being down here Tuesday and again today, I don't see anything that's going to stand in the way of having that project fully open to all traffic movements by the 21st. There'll probably be some work left for Fielder's Choice to do behind the wall, and mostly with that maintenance access road. But I think here 9 days from now, that will be open and available to everyone, just like it needs to be.
And Phil, if I can add there, specifically on 29-250, it's a busy week for us, so we got a lot of this done early. Well, they also accomplished a lot of work this week, so sound barrier wall is actually at 100% now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, they placed the last panel.
Okay, good deal.
The final paving is probably somewhere closer to 75-80%. They've got a lot of paving done this week as well.
All right, good. So, all in all, my view is that there's, forgetting reds or greens for a moment, there's just an incredible amount of work getting done, and it's getting done well, it's getting done safely, without any sacrifice of quality. And at the end of the day, when we're managing projects, that's what you're looking for. getting the work done is important. Getting it done on time is important. Getting it done safely is important. But getting the wrong thing done on time is not what you're after. So I think the design builder, Lane Corman folks, the Fielder's Choice folks, and the city's work on Hillsdale, all in the pocket where we need them to be, and we need them to stay. So, any questions about the milestones?
Yeah, I have one, and that has to do with setting retaining road piles and widen roadway on the GSI. In the last couple of meetings, we heard that right now the project was going into a quiet time prior to May 23rd.
Mm-hmm.
So I assumed that all the piles were done.
They are.
But now it shows they're only at 95%. That's
No,
struggling.
I think there's a little roadway widening because those are setting retaining wall piles and widening roadway.
Piles.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a widened roadway.
Yeah.
Not piles. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, all the piles are done. Yeah, for about 30 days now.
Yeah,
But
okay.
that's a good
Yeah,
observation.
I didn't read much after that.
No, it's all right. It's all right. No problem. No problem.
This is it now.
No problem. No problem. I think quiet in terms of what you're seeing out there, but not quiet internally in terms of the discussions and planning that are going on.
That was kind of a scheduled thing. where the
Yes,
big
absolutely.
applications
Absolutely.
Before the big push.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
I read the pilot part. and said,
No,
wait a
no
minute,
problem.
That's what's going on. I thought that
No
was
problem.
right.
No problem.
Okay,
Not a
that's all I
problem.
know.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I noticed that today, coming up from Northern Virginia, making the turn into Rio Road, where the turning, the left turn lanes have been
Yeah.
over 2 lanes.
Yeah. I will, but while Dave's walking out here, I'll tell you that we were here Tuesday. The commissioner was down, the chief engineer was here, and Jason and his construction manager, and the executives from both Lane and from Corman took us through a much expanded version of the conversation we had with you as far as their plan to accomplish the work. And I know Dave's probably been through it 3 or 4 times with Jason, but I left that meeting not only feeling comfortably optimistic, but impressed with the amount of thought that has been given around the kind of gotcha questions. Well, yeah, but what if this happens? Well, if that happens, we're going to do this. And the thing that stuck with me from leaving the meeting was, I can't remember the particular issue we were talking about, but Jason said, well, if something happens here, this is our plan B, and this is our plan C. And there was a little bit more discussion, and Bill, the construction manager, said, and if we have an issue with that, we've got D, E, and F in our pocket. So that's the work you need to do, is look at all these risks and see what might come up, and to the best of your ability, plan out scenarios that you have ready. And I think the point that we made, or VDOT made as the owner to Lane Corman, was, we're not going to stand in your way. If a risk comes to fruition and you need to implement a contingency, then we know these guys have had the conversations they needed to have in advance, so we don't stop and stand around and wait for somebody to make a decision. So it was a good session. Dave?
Okay, thank you. And, mentioning the slow period or the quiet period, unfortunately, that's the case where we're getting all the rain for the design build, and things are a little slower there. Unfortunately, for the 29-250 interchange, this is the hot time finishing that up. But I do want to state that Builder's Choice and Lane Corman, everybody, all the subcontractors, utility owners have been out working in the rain and the mud and the slop for, I believe, about 17 days straight. It's very much appreciated. On 29250 interchange this week, completing the installation of overhead sign structure 2. I believe that is scheduled for tomorrow night. So we already saw the first one go up last week or week before. I can't recall which, but that's scheduled for tomorrow, or no, tonight, I believe it is. Completing the panel installation for sound wall seat. That happened. All of the noise wall panels are in place now. Completing the barrier wall along Route 250. That work is underway. The concrete contractor came in today to start placing that barrier wall that sits in front to protect that noise wall. Completing the base stone installation along 250 westbound. Grading the maintenance bench behind the sound walls. We looked at a picture of that last time we met, what that looks like. That's for the city to perform maintenance on the backside of that wall. Lighting foundations along 250 westbound have been going well. They'll be ready for Dominion to come in and install those light poles. Completing the milling, overlay, and striping of Route 29. The milling and overlay are pretty well done, but obviously if you drove through there today, the striping needs to be done. We absolutely have to have dry weather, otherwise the paint won't stick to the asphalt and we'll have a real mess. So it's all set up and marked for that striping to occur. Looks like Sunday and Monday we have a really good chance for good weather, so it's probably going to happen during that time period. Completing the pavement markings on 29, again, just striping pavement markings, same thing. Resuming the base and intermediate asphalt along Route 250. A lot of that was completed this week. I think almost all of it was completed this week. Beginning the right-of-way fence installation and continuing the ground-mounted sign installation, so all these small ancillary signs that also need to be installed with the project. So this is a picture that Lou took last week, or late last week, of what it looks like when they're actually installing one of these sound wall panels. These are large in the pictures. They don't look very big, but they are very large structures, so there's a lot of safety issues with that. And it just kind of gives you an idea of how they fit in there. You'll notice here there's little blockouts here, so this just slides down right into it. So they really prefabricate a lot of things, and it's just putting them together kind of like a Lego kit or something. So I wanted everybody to get an idea of what it looked like when they placed those with a rather large 60-ton crane. Next slide. And then this picture shows the overhead, or cantilever sign structures that are on 250 itself. So we've got the ones on 29 that have to span 4 lanes of traffic plus the turn lanes, and those are supported on both sides, but the ones there on 250 bypass are actually cantilevered out. They were still covered when the picture was taken, but that's what those sign structures look like. And then obviously you could see the wall. Again, this was taken early last week. Next slide. And then this is the overhead sign structure that was placed just immediately north of the interchange. So you can see here the exit only lanes. Some of these are still blocked out because not all of the lanes were in place, opened up and paved. This actually will be a through and right, so it's a split lane. You can do either from that lane. The exit here, that lane, it has the markings showing which lanes you need to be in. Those weren't marked at the time this picture was taken. And similarly, that inside lane wasn't open there, depicting people for that left lane on Emmett Street. But that's what the overhead sign structure looks like. As this is all completed, this sign will come down, these temporary construction signs. Next slide.
If you had a chance to, or happened to drive up 29 in that area last week, you saw those signs in the median there and get some idea of pretty big honkers. You don't really get to appreciate it. I know Ellie drove by, and you just don't get to appreciate the size until you see them on the ground.
I saw them. They were there for like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, they were there. They were there for a couple of weeks.
And that really gives you an idea of when we had that discussion on how we were signing RIO, and eliminating one of those signs is a big deal because they are so large. Okay, so lane closures this week. We had a right lane closure from hydraulic to Barracks Road. A lot of these have been popping up here and there depending on the weather. They can't do things like setting the overhead sign structures. You can't operate cranes when there's a possibility of lightning. So if we have thunderstorms and rain, and some of these weren't needed this week. But the ramp from Barracks Road to 250 bypass eastbound was narrowed down. This was for a very short period at the end of the beginning of the week to finish installing those noise wall panels. 29 southbound and northbound ramp was closed at night for paving, so they got the base and intermediate on that. And if you drive through now, the ramp's probably starting to look a little wider to you now that a lot of the barrels are gone. The 29 southbound left 2 lanes were closed at night for paving. That happened Wednesday night. Last night. Route 29 southbound nighttime closures for the overhead sign structure installation. And this is where they'll actually close the entire road for anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes, depending on how fast they can pick and set that overhead sign structure. And that's where they have the assistance from county police or city police or state police, whomever's available to do that. So it's a safe operation. Next slide. So over the next 2 weeks, they'll complete the paving on 250 as well as the pavement markings, complete all the sign panel installations for sign structure 3, completing the grading of the maintenance bench behind the sound bowls. We hope if they, as Philip mentioned earlier, there might be a couple of little things here and there that need to be cleaned up. Really, is probably the best way to put it after it's open. It may extend a little bit past May 21st, but it'll be almost unnoticeable. Completing the right-of-way fence installation, again, behind the sound walls. They work from the maintenance bench. Completing the backfill of the barrier wall, bringing up a stone between that barrier wall and the noise wall. There's a gap there. They'll fill that with stone. Installing the roadway lighting, completing the final paving, developing the punch list. This is the list of items that really they're going to be working on. These are like the little miscellaneous outstanding things that they've kind of put on the back burner during the duration of the project to focus on more critical items. So we maintain what we call a punch list, and we go through that at the end of the project with the contractor and identify all those items they need to go back and fix a little piece of broken curb or something along those lines. That's what we're really expecting to happen after the 21st when it's open to traffic. So as of right now, we are still on track for opening all lanes, the entire facility to public use on the 21st.
I don't mind sharing with you at all that what I've advised Dave is, should there be some element of work that requires an unanticipated lane closure in order to get done by the 21st, rather take the pressure for that than not have all these lanes open by the 21st, because we can't move the May 23rd date. It doesn't look like that's going to be necessary, but
No, it happened once. Probably
Right.
most people didn't even notice it because it was a right lane closure on 250 bypass. They extended through the morning peak hour, but of course most everybody's going the other way, and that's why we talked through it with them and said, really made a risk-based decision on, okay, this is not a lot of risk associated with this to impacting traffic. They talked about possibly a daytime lane closure to pave the ramp, but they got that done without it. And as of right now, we're not anticipating anymore that. We have not heard any other requests.
Will there later be some lane closures for painting of the down wall?
Probably the shoulder.
Just the
That's what
shoulder?
we're expecting is shoulder closures. They can really work from there. We're expecting that's, Jason, I don't know, late summer maybe time frame for the
Painting
staining of the
the
walls.
stones.
Yes. Yeah.
Stain.
Yeah, August 10th.
after Rio is back open. Right.
When they're all getting done?
Yeah.
Regardless, what we're doing is we have the same lane closure restrictions that are under the contract now that we're working.
Carried
from.
forward?
Yeah.
Okay.
So a subcontractor, Lane Coleman, will do that work. We've given them what those lane closure restrictions are on 29-250 bypass to adhere to if a lane is needed to be closed, or the shoulder, likely the shoulder. Next slide. So upcoming lane closures, really just expecting these alternating lane closures for installation of the pavement markings. Once we get some dry weather, again, I think that's going to be Sunday evening, Monday evening, once we look on the weather channel and see the little sunshine marker there. And then 29 southbound closed at night for the installation of the overhead sign structure, the last one that's remaining on the project. Any other questions on 29-250 interchange? Okay. So right grade separated intersection, for it to be the sleepy time or slow time, there's still a lot of items up here. And again, some of this stuff is dragging on just because of the relentless rain, but it's all getting done. Finishing up the curb and gutter, sidewalk, raised islands, under drain, getting all of this stuff done on the outside so that the focus can be on the inside of that project come May 23rd. Median strip demolition has begun. If you've driven through there, and on the southbound side, everybody's pushed over. There's room to work there. So that concrete median is now being demolished. The southeast quadrant fire department connection is being wrapped up this week. Stormwater facility 6, stormwater management facility 6, the one there at the entrance to Albemarle Square. I think all the grading is done. Now it's just putting the pieces together and starting to backfill it. Form preparations is generally happening at our office location. They've graded out a nice area to lay out all the forms for the retaining walls to get those all assembled and ready so that they can go in very quickly during the crossover closure period. Beam seat preparations, that's the abutments that are already in place, just kind of preparing those. They have to put a coating on those to set the beams on. That's happening this week. Backfilling the abutments, there's a gap there in some locations. It just needs to be backfilled. That's happening this week. Southbound traffic shift, which happened on Sunday night, so pushing everybody over to the new lanes there, providing that space to get everybody around the project after the 23rd. Asphalt paving in Albemarle Square, still waiting on this one. We have a fix for it's a little bit difficult to explain, but we have some CenturyLink cables that are there, and we had a little bit of a conflict with the storm drain. So we had a redesign of the storm drain. We've got that solution. It's all approved and being installed now. So hopefully by next week, maybe that paving will occur. Overhead sign structure and pedestrian light pole foundations are underway this week. Continue to pre-tie the retaining wall rebar up on their 29-yard. Signal foundations, the cabinet foundations, the bulbs, the CCTV cameras, all these elements that deal with the permanent installation of the traffic signal are going in now. So they don't have to, again, focus on that while they really need to be focusing on that excavation and construction period. So this picture was taken Tuesday morning. This is at the casting yard. It's called Atlantic Metro Cast in Portsmouth. And this is where all of the box beams are being constructed for the project. And I know it's a little close up, but this just gives you a picture of what these box beams actually look like.
Are they hollow?
They are. They have voids in them, so they're not completely hollow for the duration. They have what they call ribs at certain distances. But this, these rebar saddles on top, they go in and they place the beams, and then there'll be about a foot thick deck that's poured on top of it. So this really connects all that steel to the steel and the concrete that's in that upper deck section. But I just want everybody to kind of get a mental image of what these beams look like. They're 72 feet long, and they will be positioned up in the median of the 29 widening project. So at least for a few days there, it'll probably be a good picture opportunity to see all these beams sitting on trailers pre-positioned, ready to be put together, kind of like the sound walls. So they come down, put them together, and we're talking a week of bringing beams in, setting beams. Then the beams are all in place, ready to put the deck on top and continue the excavation on either side. Kind of that sequence we talked about a couple of meetings ago.
And there are 47 of these, right?
47, sir. So lane closures this week, the same that we've been seeing for quite some time now. They're triple lane closures at nighttime. Route 20, the crossover of Rio closed at night. So at nighttime, this really looks like what it's going to look like after May 23rd at night. And then in the daytime, more lanes on northbound, southbound 29 will be open. Next slide. So over the next 2 weeks, completing the curb and gutter, sidewalk, raised islands, under draining, median strip demolition, finish grading any little slopes that are sitting out there that need to be finished up and seeded, gas line and water line, valve removal. So if you recall a couple meetings ago, the sequence of excavating this, the first step was to come through and mill out all the asphalt. Well, there's gas and water valves that are sticking up that need to be removed. We don't want to hit those with the mill. It'll severely damage the machine. So they're working on that now over the next couple of weeks. Well, next week. I think they've actually already started that. Setting the temporary barrier wall, setting the remaining drop inlets and pouring inverts. So this is basically tying all your storm drain structures together, getting that completed. Completing the fire department connection in the southeast quadrant, finishing up stormwater facility 6, preparing the formwork, and cured in place pipe rehabilitations. There's some pipes out there that have some leaking joints. Storm drain pipes have been out there for years and want to reuse them, so they're going to use the technology that a lot of sanitary owners use to fix their leaking pipes. It kind of goes in with the polystyrene resin, inflates a balloon, and basically it seals up the pipe so water won't leak in or leak out of that pipe. That'll be going on next week as well. Miscellaneous concrete work project. This is, we have a little piece of curb over here that we haven't poured yet, so they, just project-wide going around and fixing all that up. Continuing to pre-tie the retaining wall rebar, the signal foundations, cabinets, and all the accessories along with that to get the permanent signals in place. General crossover shutdown preparations. There's a lot of things that just need to happen, just preparation work. Planning work in the office has been happening for quite some time, but really ramping up lately. So now we have on our 2-week look ahead, the crossover will close at 9 p.m. on May 22nd. So basically what they're doing is that Sunday night, they're implementing the same lane closures that we have in place now. It's just that on Monday morning, it doesn't open back up. It stays closed. They put their barrier wall in, and then that begins that May 23rd to September 2nd period to actually construct the majority of the project. Beginning the asphalt pavement milling, like I just mentioned, beginning the compressed lane excavation, and begin setting the bridge beams. I think we're still on target for the 27th to start setting beams. So starting on the 27th for 1 week, setting all those bridge beams. Next slide.
That's an amazing feat. I mean, to go from the 23rd to setting the first beam 4 days later will be a bravo moment. Will be the beginning of a bravo moment.
Is the excavation work weather sensitive at all? If this rain keeps up?
It is.
Forever.
It is, but there's plans in place for that.
Yeah.
Hopefully not forever. I told them we don't want to do a change order for it. But it is weather sensitive, but that's part of the planning process, and that's part of their reason for selecting the method of milling out the asphalt. Because if it's raining, then they can put those millings down. It's almost like driving on pavement to keep from tracking mud out. I mean, they're not going to stop the work because it's raining. It just makes it a little more difficult for them to do, a little more. So I think there was a lot of planning that went into thinking about weather as well. It's always a topic of discussion.
My response always is, yes, it rains.
This is Virginia.
So be ready for it. Although I've grown tired of it here.
The question is whether it ever suns.
Yeah.
Well, and what we've seen over, again, the past 17 days of rainfall is work hasn't stopped. It's continued. You may focus on different things, but it's all productive work. So, okay. So I've got 2 separate lane closure pieces here. The first is what's happening before May 23rd, and it's the exact same thing that's been happening for months now. The triple lane closures and the crossover being closed. And then after May 23rd, crossover is closed at Rio. No left turns to or from Rio or Route 29. No through movements across 29 on Rio, but the lanes north and southbound on 29 will remain open, and you can still make right turns from Rio to northbound and southbound 29. We will maintain 2 lanes on 29 southbound and 3 lanes northbound during the daytime, and there will be lane closures at night to bring in materials, specifically the bridge beams. Those will generally be set at night so that we can bring the truck in, pick the beam off the truck, set it in place, the truck can continue on in a lane closure. And again, the right turns will be maintained from Rio. Any other questions on the Rio GSI project? It really does get interesting now that this closure is in the 2-week look ahead. So.
I have to say that you did that wonderful explanation with the big sheets and everything of what it's going to look like and how it's going to happen and all the. And I took it home and I was all excited to tell my husband exactly how it was going to. I couldn't do it. And so, not now, but I think probably it'll help to hear it at some point, kind of exactly how that process happens, especially for the public if people are watching. Maybe next time.
Well, we
Really
better
good
do it
things
now
happen.
because next time
Well,
it'll
it'll
be
already
halfway
be
done.
in process. So I don't really.
We could
Need it.
also, though, follow it up. One of the things I was going to ask you before we leave today is what type of reporting that you would like to get through that 103-day period. And we could use that as a base graphic to explain
And maybe
where we are.
narrative, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the pictures itself seemed really clear when there was something coming in my ear telling them what they meant. But when I looked at them later, I didn't have the audio and had a harder time
Well,
with it.
just very, very simply and quickly, and I think the genius of the plan is its simplicity.
Yeah.
Even though it's a complex operation, is step 1 is to go in and mill out all the pavement in that bridge area, plus 100 feet on either side. And then they excavate down a little bit, so they need 7 feet of depth, and then start setting the beams.
So I guess the question is, where is the bridge area? Because traffic is still going north-south.
Mhm.
So
It's
where's the hole?
The bridge is east-west.
Yes, I know.
Okay.
so all the traffic will be pushed out a little bit
Yes.
and working right in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I needed to know.
Yeah.
That piece. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. And then it's just hopping back and forth.
Got
You'll
it.
recall about
Yeah.
the excavation.
It's
Trying to
the
figure out
lid on the
moving cars
underpass.
were.
Yeah, you'll be driving around the
Around
work
it.
zone, and they're protected with the barrier wall there. We ordinarily don't like to work between traffic, but
Yeah.
when you're protected by a barrier wall, it makes it a lot more palatable.
Okay.
Dave, just as a risk of being redundant, because I know all this has been talked about and thought about, but school buses, transit buses, emergency services, everybody's in the loop, everybody's ready with alternate plans and the whole deal.
Yes, and Lou's been communicating with anybody who's ever lived, been, traveled through, or thought about being in Albemarle County. I think he's probably reached out to in all those different groups, the travel associations, the bus routes. I know Brad, y'all have planned out how you're getting around. Quite simply, they follow our detour routes, which we'll go over here just in a little bit. And it's just a minor modification to some of their routes. Yes.
The preemption is in place for the emergency service?
Preemption will always remain in place at all
Yeah.
times. Okay. Karen?
Did the meeting start? I had
Yeah, I heard him on the radio. I don't watch TV that much, so.
I didn't watch either one. It has, but TV
Yes.
and radio.
Yes, and internet and print. I know you showed me another print ad that was happening yesterday.
Yes.
That will be displayed the entire 29 corridor, north to south. So I know our friends down in Lynchburg had asked about that before. That'll be a nice print ad there. Also using the Rio Plus 29 logo to really kind of pull everything together so people can identify that.
I've seen those.
Yeah. So yeah, we have all the media forms are currently active. Okay. Yeah. And they'll continue through the summertime period. Any other questions on Rio GSI? Okay. So Route 29 widening work this week. We've talked about the jack and bore, the structures 7.5 and 15, 20 for a little while. Those continue. We were hoping that 15, 20 would be done by now, but they ran into some issues that they're currently working through, but I think they have 16 more feet to go. So they're kind of knocking on the door. They've got 133 feet done, just 16 feet more to go. Slip lining the box culverts, there are 2 box culverts adjacent to structure 1520 that we'll be putting steel pipes in because they're aging and need have some structural deficiencies. That's going to start very soon. Actually, they already brought in some of the materials. They haven't actually started slip lining yet due to the delay on 1520. The wire wall construction in the middle of 29 continues for that traffic switch over to phase 2 we talked about at the last meeting. Fine grading for phase 2 paving, stripping and hauling topsoil. Cut and fill in the median continues generally on the northern part of the project. Completing the phase 2 gas main installation. That's wrapping up this week. They're actually going to switch over to the new line next week. And next week they're going to mobilize to phase 3, which is the last phase of the gas main installation. And Dominion pole adjustments, they have 3 poles remaining on the western side of the road. So they'll be done very soon. And then the communication lines that are on those same poles can all switch over following Dominion. Next slide. I thought this was an interesting picture just to give everybody a sense of what this jack and bore equipment looks like. This is actually a seat and a conveyor, so there's a cutter head on the end. There's somebody that sits in here and watches all this material that's being cut out go down this chute, so it's kind of a interesting little thing. It looks like something from 1960s.
That's because it's something from 1960s.
Yeah, probably. I was thinking like NASA probably had that in the 1960s. I thought it was an interesting picture. Next slide. And this is just a picture showing this is the gas main crew. This is taking at Asheville Boulevard, looking to the south, and some of the grade changes here. You see the grading for the phase 2, moving the traffic over, and the wire wall installation will be occurring in this area right here because we've got such a grade differential. And this will allow the eventual rectification of this, hill, this blind hill there that has caused so many problems over the years.
There are 2 projects in go back to that picture just a minute. There are 2 projects in Hampton Roads that are just getting underway now on 64 on the peninsula that took a lot of language from the requirements for the 29 widening and incorporated them into those projects because they're basically doing the same thing, working in the median in a work zone between a east and westbound interstate. But how the barriers were set and requirements around the barriers and the maintenance of traffic took a lot from what Dave and Jason put in place here.
We get a commission for that.
You do. A check is being drafted.
Okay, so lane closures on 29 widening, it's the same thing. Periodically, they'll do a left or right lane closure if something needs to be, materials need to be brought in safely or something like that. Generally, I don't think there's a lot of lane closures up there except for during material delivery. Next slide. Over the next 2 weeks, this first one's a big deal. So all those beams that we looked at, the picture of, all 47 of them are going to come in and be stored in the median of 29 widening project.
Oh.
And then each night they'll go from there, the truck will back up, hook up to the trailer, pull it down the Rio, pull it off, set it, truck will come back around, pick up another trailer. So all be staged right there in the median of 29 behind the barrier walls on trailers, all ready to go. So they start coming in on the 18th. Cut to fill grading continues, firewall construction continues, fine grading for the phase 2 traffic shift will continue, beginning the phase 3 gas main relocations next week, which should have a duration of 4 weeks. So we saw some red on the schedule for that. Yes, absolutely, but we're looking at 4 more weeks of that work and completing that. Beginning the jack and bore for structure 11.4. Jack and Moore for structure 1520, hopefully, well, that should be wrapped up next week, we hope. We're looking for that solution right now. Mobilizing to that same Jack and Moore crew to structure 1220. And again, if you recall, the sheets go from south to north, so that they're moving south to structures 11.4 and 1220, kind of in between Ashwood and Hollymead. And relocating the communications utilities to the new aerial poles that I just mentioned. Dominion moves their poles, and all the communications hop over to the new poles. Lane closures are the same as always. They're limited to nighttime, generally a left, possibly right lane closure, depending on what activity you need. Any questions on 29 Rodney? Okay. So Berkmar extended, a lot of activity on this project still. Backfilling abutments A and B, 84-inch culvert stream diversion. So that this week they set up the stream diversion to set that large 84-inch pipe where it needs to be. Cut to fill operations, backfilling the 60-inch culverts that were put in place, stripping topsoil, forming the abutment A stem, and I think we have I'll kind of be able to point out to you what that looks like in just a moment with a picture. CSL tube grouting and CSL testing, that's cross-sonic logging, so they're doing the drilled shafts, and that's a non-destructive test to make sure that we have good integrity of the concrete in that drilled shaft, so there's some testing going on there. Next slide. Drilling the North Mass for blasting at Coles. I think we've had a little bit of delay for the minor blasting that has to be done due to the weather. So some of that has been drilled, but they haven't performed the first shot there behind the Coles yet. Installing stream crossing number 8, temporary sediment traps throughout the project, erosion control throughout the project, and continuing the drilled shafts. I believe we have 3 of 6 drilled shafts poured right now, so we're halfway on that. Next slide.
Do we need to reset any expectations with the public as far as the blasting? I mean, we sent a notice out and we haven't done anything.
No, we sent just a general notice out.
Right.
The fire marshal is working with the blaster very closely to communicate with affected properties.
Okay. All right. All right.
Yeah, they have a very specific program.
I'm saying the news about Almar County and noise ordinance that somehow did or did not relate to this. Channel 29, I couldn't understand what they say. I don't understand half of what they say anyway. But,
Could have Mark go through that.
Do you know what that is?
Yeah, Mark could do that.
Maybe once you get through your part, we all decide.
Yeah. Can we do it under new business, Henry? Are you good with that?
Sure, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay, Mark.
I say, it was very confusing.
Yeah.
I just, for the rest of me, I couldn't understand what they were saying. But, as I say, John 29.
We'll go through it.
Many times.
We get it right sometimes.
A lot of it was in.
So this picture shows
So I couldn't understand it.
This picture shows a 60-inch pipe being installed. This is the stream diversion. I think we had another picture similar to this at the last meeting. It just shows you how much work goes into actually creating that stream diversion, protecting that stream diversion with silt fence so that we don't have any muddy water leaving the site. And we've not seen that. I think daily we're taking pictures at the outlet ends to make sure that that's clean water leaving the site. But that's a big pipe, big operation. And the 84-inch that I mentioned earlier will be done in a similar fashion with a stream diversion, only an even bigger pipe.
I have a question here.
Yes.
This particular culvert seems extremely long, unless you're building up a very high embankment.
This is a location, most of these large pipes are where we're building up that large embankment.
Okay.
And this is where a lot of the dirt from Rio is going to go, locations like these. Okay, just a moment ago I mentioned the stem, the abutment stem. We're looking at abutment B here on Berkmar. And what you can see here is you can actually see the seats where the steel will sit now. So it's been formed up, it's poured, it's ready for that. And then the back wall, and this is just generally what we're referring to as the stem, is what sits up above this lower section here where the piles and everything were. So both abutment B and abutment A stems are coming up, back walls are being formed and poured. So we've seen a lot of good progress on both abutments. And this was taken, I believe it was Wednesday, no, not Monday. This is Pier 1 Shaft 3. But I wanted everybody to kind of see the size of this. These are 7-foot diameter drilled shafts, and they were pulling the casing. So they had finished pumping the concrete into this shaft, and were pulling the casing that they used when they drilled down to keep the soil around it from falling in. It's a big operation, a lot of people involved, a lot of moving pieces. You can see the front of a large crane here. So everybody has to keep a close eye on safety there. Next slide. And this is a picture of the same drill shaft with the concrete pump truck. And you may have seen something like this if you've seen the construction of a large building or a swimming pool in somebody's backyard. They can't get a concrete truck to. The concrete truck actually backs up, dumps into a hopper, and this pumps it all the way up and down into the drill shaft over here. Now, if I remember correctly, this shaft took 7 trucks of concrete. There's quite a bit of concrete going in the ground, 7 feet diameter, generally about 30 feet deep with the rebar cage in it. Next slide. Lane closures, really no lane closures, just a flagging operation there along Ryder Mills Road to make sure concrete trucks can get in and out in a safe manner. Next slide. So over the next 2 weeks, backfilling abutment B, you saw behind it rather large void. There's an MSE wall that will be constructed similar to what we saw on abutment A, backfilling the approach to that. Temporary pipe installations for drainage, installing sediment traps, cut to fill operations. This is generally push them with a dozer, filling in areas. Stripping topsoil, the MSD panels and leveling pad on abutment B, forming and pouring the abutment A stem, drilling and blasting on the north end of the project if we can get some decent weather, installing the pipe head walls and end walls. These are what you see on the ends of all the pipes that keep the water from eroding around the pipe. It's big concrete flat slabs. Installing the 84-inch pipe and continuing the drilled shafts for the piers, and removing the overhead power line along Ryder Mills Road. There's just a short section of power line that Dominion is going to run to the ground. Everything's in place right now. Dominion just has to pull the cable through it and hook it up, and it's done. Next slide. And again, over the next 2 weeks, the same flagging operation is expected along Ryder Mills Road. Questions on Burkemont? Okay. Slide. So the signal updates, this week, all of the controllers and the malfunction management units were installed. So all the equipment's in place now for those signal upgrades. So they started the equipment testing. They'll continue that for the next week or so just to make sure everything's working right. They have full control over the signals, and they'll begin the total operation prior to May 23rd, so that they have communications to all those signals surrounding the area to make sure that anybody using an alternate route doesn't cause a problem somewhere else, or doesn't cause a problem we can't fix within minutes instead of days. Any questions on that work? Okay. Next slide. This is the graphic that we looked at last time that just showed all the work associated with that project. You can see it's all in green now, except for things that were not included to be improvements as part of that work, like the Ryder-Burkemont signal is a total rebuild with the design-build contract, so there won't be a signal there this summer anyway. So all those improvements are in.
So with the exception of the work that will be done along with Rio GSI, we're done.
Yes, that's correct. Okay, Hillsdale Extended. Hal, you want to run through these?
Sure.
Thank you, Dave. This week, questions from the bidders were due on Monday at noon. I believe there were 41 questions received. And as mentioned, Philip mentioned earlier today, the city is working on that as an addendum. and they will issue that tomorrow morning to include responses to those questions with the notice that the bid date will be extended 1 week to address the questions and get their pricing. So they can take that information and not be limited to some part of tomorrow to contact suppliers. So that will result in better pricing, and that is the right way to go for that. Utility relocations have continued. Most of the, or all of the conduit around the commercial buildings has been installed. They've moved to the south and now to the north, so the corridor is being upgraded with utility relocations. Dominion Power is continuing their work. CenturyLink is very far ahead, and that work is looking good. Business relocations, there was a meeting this week, and things are still on track with the business owners. So we've got positive news there, and we do expect them to be out and out of the way by the end of July. So that's all good news. Next slide. Okay, next 2 weeks, received bids on the 23rd. This was a late-breaking development, so it didn't get included on this slide. Utility relocations are continuing. We're going to help the city with the bid review. They will take the lead on that, and we will assist on that effort. The business relocations, that work will continue on. And Dominion Virginia Power and CenturyLink will come back once all the conduits are in and relocate the actual service cables and make those connections. And Comcast is beginning their work next week.
I'd just like to reemphasize that Dominion Virginia Power and CenturyLink, they're ahead of schedule. They're doing a fantastic job, just like they did with us up on Rio. Comcast hasn't started yet. We hope that they follow right in their footsteps, but so far things are looking very good for utility relocations on those two. Thank you.
When Hal said late breaking, I'd say it's about 1 o'clock today that we made that decision for the, or agreed with the city's decision to hold off a week.
Is 41 an unusual number of questions to get, or is that sort of par for the course, or how does that compare?
I've seen up to 200 on some projects. With the complexity of the commercial building that needs to be partially demolished, I can certainly understand lots of questions. Some of the equipment was proprietary equipment that was that we had to get approvals for, and there may be some questions because some of the contractors may not have worked with that. But I don't think that that's an unusually high amount of question. I've seen fewer and I've seen more. So. And
it's not a reflection on the quality of plans, not necessarily a reflection on the quality of plans. And that's why you have that period for, you particularly on design bid to build, where all the design has been done, and then it's available to contractors, and contractors. The reason for that period is to get some questions and clarity, and that you can expect will help influence the best prices. So, and for another week, it's okay. Like I said, we did the same thing on the design build contract. It's either 2 or 3 weeks, but it was really over. It was 2 weeks over Christmas. That, based on the questions we got and evaluating them, it was to our advantage to say, hey, look, take another couple weeks and chew on this over the holidays before you get a surprise.
You expect, obviously, lots of questions.
Yes.
Because they have to really do
exactly.
the design, complete the design, not just a sketched out design.
Yeah.
In this case, if you want to be the devil's advocate, too many questions is a reflection on the quality of the engineering.
I
The
don't.
engineering firm would probably have anticipated most of those questions and haven't put it in the bid documents already.
Well, I mean, appreciate.
I'm standing on a soapbox.
Yeah.
But having been there.
One of the other things to think about there is contractors often will ask questions to try to influence other bidders. So you see a lot of that. If they see something that may not be addressed fully, or that they think that other people might be missing, they'll ask a question to make sure that everybody else is including it in their bid as well.
Make sure the other guy doesn't underbid, huh?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I remember.
And there weren't that many questions at the pre-bid, so I think now that they've absorbed things, they had some time to think about it.
Yeah, I'm not going to go to bed and lose sleep over it tonight. I'll lose sleep over something else. But the ramp design. There were some exchanges prior to the last meeting with some concern about the ramp and the ramp design, and we talked about it a little bit. But given the nature of some of the exchange, which is all part of our public record, I felt it was appropriate to just go back and touch on that one more time, in maybe a little bit more organized fashion. And first points about the lane width, the width of the lanes. The lane width and pavement widths meet design requirements. There are two 12-foot lanes at the ramp entrance. Now this is southbound on 29, so obviously. There are two lanes. Their total pavement there varies between 28 to 30 feet, depending on the shoulder and the curb. We're going to talk about width, and then we're going to talk about curvature in the next slide, okay? So two 12-foot lanes, total pavement width varies 28 to 30 feet. Two 12-foot lanes kind of at the midpoint of the ramp. The pavement varies a little wider there, depending on the shoulder and the width of the curb. And then at the top of the ramp, there's two 12-foot lanes and 10-foot paved shoulder. So now we're up beyond that nose where the ramp meets Route 250. So two 12-foot lanes. Imagine for a minute a nickel and a quarter. A nickel and a quarter. And the radius of the nickel and the quarter is the distance from the midpoint of those two coins to the side, right? To any side. That's the radius. What is a curve? A curve is a piece of that circle, right? It's some piece of that circle of some determined length. This ramp from its entrance up to the straight section that ties to Route 250 is a compound curve. So it's a piece of the nickel connected to a piece of the quarter. Two different arcs, right? Two different arcs. The design guidelines for a semi-trailer, an 18-wheeler, I think 75 feet long, affectionately called a WB 67, which I'm sure rings in everybody's mind.
Fondly.
The minimum curve radius for that vehicle to turn is 44.8 feet. So that's really the tracking of the cab of the tractor trailer. The trailer is going to turn much sharper because it's behind the cab. The minimum curve radius in the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials design guidelines, which VDOT uses, is 45 feet, 44.8, 45 feet. The smaller curve, the curve right at the ramp entrance, it's the smaller and shorter curve, has a radius of 279 feet, and to finish out that compound curve, headed up to the straight section, has a radius of 397 feet. And that radius does kind of give you a feel of the sharpness of the curve. Those the radii, those two radiuses, were tested using a software package called AutoTurn, which is just what it kind of sounds like. It's a software package that helps determine whether or not you meet the design guidelines. Was tested for two side-by-side WB67s. In other words, what if there was a semi in the right turn lane and the lane immediately next to it, and they went in tandem up that ramp? Could they make it? And the answer is yes, based on the design, the width of the lanes, the width of the pavement, because if that should occur, those two vehicles, those two trucks, are going to track outside the lane width in places and onto the curb, but they could both negotiate that ramp. I really, as much for anything, put this in here just as part of the document of our public record. And you know, Dave could speak to which line is which, because one line tracks the cab, right, Dave, and there's another line that tracks the trailer. But the result of all of that is that those two vehicles could negotiate. This is obviously 29 South, and here's the ramp. Could negotiate that. So just to be clear for the record, while right now, particularly with the barrels and some pieces paved and some pieces milled, there might be a perception that, wow, can two vehicles actually negotiate this ramp? The answer is yes. That this design is designed appropriately, designed using the right guidelines for the right vehicles, and should not present a problem. And I don't know, to the extent, Dave, that you want to say any more about AutoTurn and WB67s.
Just quite simply,
People may have a burning desire to hear more. No, in all seriousness, this is a serious issue. There were some good observations brought up, and I think it's important that our record be clear about the quality of the design here.
Well, it's hard to argue with simulation software as well designed, obviously. So those of us who were a little bit scared, we'll just have to wait and see, and hopefully
Take it on faith.
confirm that we were wrong, and that's good.
But are there more questions here or anything that Mark wants to?
Well, I kind of I'll apologize first to the group because I kind of stirred things up and then didn't show up.
Well, and it's even more important, I thought, to go through this with you being here.
And you have enough resonance with everyone that.
But and I'm trying to be clear before the meeting. I'd gone through the design. I was confident the design was good, and it was a safe design. What I was trying to get across is a perception on the part of a driver. If you're in that right-hand lane with that 18-wheeler in the left lane right next to you, it's going to feel a little tight for you. But it's a perception thing. Just like you can paint chicanes on a roadway and people will slow down. The road hasn't really changed, but they will slow down because it feels a little narrow to them. And it's going to be the same sort of thing here. And I'm curious to see how drivers do react to that.
I look forward to driving it up just next to a tractor trailer and see how it
And one thing we talked about
I
last
tend to be a defensive driver. I was trained in defensive driving, so I probably will slow down and let that truck go first. I would just inch behind him.
One thing we talked about 2 weeks ago too is that that's not necessarily a bad thing, that people slow down there.
Provided you don't cause rear end collisions.
Well,
as a result.
slamming
Yes.
brakes is different than.
Yeah, that's, you're absolutely right. It's kind of a mobile traffic calming in a way.
You may remember from when you looked at the plans, the design speed here is very low.
Yes.
It's very low.
Now, what is it posted for? Like, with those yellow signs that everybody.
I don't know what the
knows?
ramp will be posted. I believe it's 25. I would think 25.
Most of us either
perception
ignore
will
it
enforce
or
that.
get the horn behind us if we're
Yeah.
following it.
Right, right.
In those curves, I mean, I'm always amazed, it's much lower than the regular speed limit. And a lot of people get very impatient if you actually slow down to that speed.
Keep in mind, we're gonna have some beautiful sound walls along this stretch.
The horns won't bother me.
There will be some dandy sound walls.
Yeah,
That is true. That is true. But no, I mean, I appreciate the exchange that took place and just wanted to be sure.
Well, at the beginning, I was.
Touched all the bases there.
When Mark brought this up, I started to worry too. So, well, thank you for
Absolutely.
going into this
Yeah,
much detail.
absolutely. Okay, the value of the disposed right-of-way parcels, there, if you remember from our chart, there were 15. And I wanted to, Kristen had asked about the value of the sailbacks. We're only looking at closed sales since anything else is a speculation. And while all these properties are identified on the map, I'll just be honest, and I know it's all public information and it's there for the public record. I didn't see a need to say, and these are the people that have purchased everything back. That's available to anybody that wants to see it. The long and short of it is, of these 15 parcels that VDOT acquired for $4.8 million, they sold them and recovered almost 4.2. Well, 4.9 to 4.2. So there's I guess a market loss of $700,000.
As a businessman, I think VDOT did a lousy deal because, if I sold to VDOT for, just to name a number, for 100, and the market value has gone up, and obviously inflation, so I was given a certain amount of money was worth X amount, but inflation adjusted, it's much less. Because some of these properties were bought 10 years ago or more, 15. You can look up the CPI index.
Right.
Obviously, it's a great deal. I was given full value when I sold it, and now I buy it at reduced value because it's not the market price.
Well, not if you were property owner number one.
Pardon?
Not if you were property owner number one.
Or 10 or 11.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. I wish
So look, there's a lot of circumstances. Yeah.
There's a couple things going on here. Number one, not all of these properties were purchased by the former owner.
Right.
Some of them were not, the former owner declined to repurchase them, and therefore they went through a process that is set out by state law for us disposing of the properties, and it finally results in a point where an offer is made and VDOT agrees to that offer. There are 3 up there where there was no variance at all. Those were advance acquisitions, which are required to be offered back to the former owner for the price that VDOT paid, and those 3 individuals took up on it. So
those
they may have gotten a pretty good deal.
They
if
got
bought it in,
they got a windfall.
If they sold it in the mid-90s and bought it back for the same price that
I wish I could have done it.
that VDOT paid for it. So there are a lot, and the final one, that $500, that represents an easement, not a.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that one.
Well,
Yeah, and I can see how number 1 was obviously sold to somebody else, and the somebody else had to buy it at market value.
Right.
But that also gives you an idea of what the spread is between the original price and the current market value. And there you see the windfall for those
Different
that
things have happened.
repurchased the original property.
VDOT was directed to dispose of these properties, and so that's what's being done.
Well, as VDOT should be, because VDOT's not a landlord and not in the business of buying property from people
And the
and
state
hanging
law
on
requires
to
us
it
to
and taking it off to the tax roll.
I can see where it's offered. I mean, if I had
So-
a policy, I can see how it's offered
to the original owners bet an adjusted price, to make up for inflation.
Personally speaking, the faster VDOT gets through with this, the better. It's been around too long and needs to be disposed of at the fairest market value, following the procedures that VDOT needs to follow with respect to disposing of excess right of way, I think is the term that's used. So to just be very honest, I'm pleased to see 15 of these closed and when I saw that delta, my thought was, not too bad.
Bill, do you know where the money goes? Is it just back in the general kitty, or?
As far as I know, the money becomes back through the 6-year program.
Yeah, it goes
Yeah,
first.
that's where it came from.
It goes first to cover any costs associated with VDOT's maintenance of these properties and getting them back into shape to be sold. And then any other money would go into a UPC that's been established specifically for this money, and then at some point, whatever's left will be returned.
It's allocated by the CTB.
Stays in the district or
back to
statewide?
project. I don't even know.
And will it increase the amount of money?
I'm sure Allison's answer to that is yes.
Fight for that.
But I mean, generally, it would come back through now with House Bill 2 in 1887, or however that distribution goes, I think.
But will it increase that pot, or kind of supplant something that won't be spent instead from the general fund?
No, it would, if there were $5 million available, there would be 9.2.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't supplant something else. It may offset to some degree crossover from maintenance to construction.
Sure.
I don't know. I mean,
But it's new money as far as the fund is concerned.
Yeah, it's net new. So that's pretty good. The conservation easements.
Let me,
Yeah.
because I know this has been discussed before too, several months ago, because people would come up and say, oh, well, then that means there's a chance for new projects. Well, just remember, we have a long list in the long-range transportation plan, way beyond available funds.
Yeah.
So for anybody listening, it doesn't mean, oh, let's submit some new projects because there's new money. It doesn't work that way.
Through House Bill 2, there was $7 billion worth of project requests made for $1.6 billion. So, yes, it's new, and it's always good to find a little change in your pocket that you didn't remember you had there. But it's
But the need's already exceeded.
it's a modest amount. Of those properties, of those 93, I think it was, there was a conservation easement, and Lou, catch me if I say this wrong, there was a conservation easement on 4 of those properties. When VDOT acquired those properties, there was additional compensation to lift those easements because the property was going to be used for a road. As those properties are being offered for sale, the easements, the conservation easement, is being reestablished on those 4 properties.
Yes.
And that's going through the process of being reestablished, or maybe they already have been.
Right. I
I
think the process is still in place. but
think the process is still underway.
It's a separate legal transaction along with the sale of the property, but once that conservation easement is reestablished, it will continue to convey with the property into the future.
So the easement that did exist will continue to exist.
The same easement's essentially being.
Seems to be the long and short of it.
You're trying to get those established before you sell them back.
Yes.
Yes.
So they will convey with the conservation easement.
Yes.
How can I make sure I get the right information on which properties that is?
You know what? There's a map in last meetings, but Lou, how about Lou getting that to you?
Okay.
Because you'll see them. They're kind of midway midway of the project. Yeah, you'll fix Mark up there?
Thank you. So just on, the easement was on the properties when VDOT originally acquired them.
Yes, and as part of the acquisition process, we needed to remove those conservation easements from the properties so that they could be used for the transportation project. And now that we are no longer using them for the project and we're selling them, we're disposing of them back into private hands, we are reestablishing that.
Now,
Which makes some sense, because I can see
Yeah.
if VDOT got in the business purchasing properties, removing easements, and just getting rid of the properties without the easement. That could
Way to get
cause
rid of
some
easements.
heartburn.
Right.
And this is a little bit different from some of the work that's being done on some of the other properties, but there are a number of easements on some of these bypass properties. Some of them are temporary construction easements, there were utility, there were easements that were purchased for utility relocation. Some of those easements have none of those easements will ever be used, but there are some of them that the owner received compensation for that owner probably has no interest really in paying that money back to clear the easement. So VDOT's working with the utilities to just remove those easements without any monetary compensation, just so there's no cloud on the deeds in terms of easements being there.
I'm only making this comment as an observer and somebody who's probably could take a pretty good guess at this. What stirs in my mind is the amount of time that's gone by with this property and holding these properties for the bypass. That $4 million has probably been spent a couple of times just dealing with it.
Yeah.
Because, highway departments aren't in the business of being landlords. And whenever you get in that spot, we were in that spot when I was at VDOT on the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, where we had bought 2 huge apartment buildings, and I would have sold them for $1 if somebody would have let me, because the money we were spending managing 2 active apartment buildings in Northern Virginia was, whew. Anyway, we'll continue to update you as sales close and let you know how all that is working out. Okay. The detour routes and signs, and Karen and others have asked about this. There is no easy to read graphic on I'll pass it out for you today.
Thank you.
But I'm going to have Dave take you through what does exist, and for anyone that is watching that wants to see where this sheet is, if you go to learn more.
I actually have one of those before.
Here, give Dave one.
Thank you.
If you go to learn more and then down to the RIO GSI and look down the GSI page under design submissions, you'll see roadway plans approved for construction that were posted on January the 26th of this year. And that's a big file, 123 megs, I think, if I remember. It's the 63rd sheet of that file that you will be looking at. That's basically a key for the detour signing. And Dave, take it away there.
I spent many years designing detour routes that would span 40 sheets to try to show the locations of all the signs. And I think eventually somebody figured out, we could do this a whole lot simpler on one sheet of paper and cut the size of our plans down, have all the information there, and that's what this is. So we have a detour for traffic that wants to make a left from southbound 29 to RIO, detour for traffic that wants to make a left from northbound 29 to West RIO. We have traffic that wants to go straight across, and we have traffic that wants to make a left from RIO onto 29. So those are our detour movements. What we have here is, you'll see on these sheets, we have these little boxes with a lettering and numbering them. And they correspond to, on this lower section, a box down here with a letter and a number in it associated with some sign. So for instance, we have, and I'll have to refer to this, A2 here on southbound 29, A2 down here. First, it has a size of a 48 inch by 48 inch, so a 4 foot by 4 foot sign that says simply detour ahead. It's their first notification that I have a detour that I need to follow. I need to look for more information. And that sign there is just a little bit south of Myers Drive.
What does the W20-2 mean?
That's a VDOT designation that corresponds to, it's our internal code for what that sign is. So if you look in the work area protection manual, there's all these numbers. So a W20-2 is that detour ahead sign.
Detour ahead.
48 inch by 48 inch, and has all the specifications on the lettering. So it doesn't mean anything to anybody but us and the contractor, quite honestly.
But it's otherwise explained by the inches and what it says.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. So but the important thing is there's a 4 foot by 4 foot sign out there. It's an orange sign with black lettering that says detour ahead. So that gets the driver's attention. The next sign, a little bit further down the road, you'll see it has 4 boxes with letters and numbers in it. B2, D2, P2, and M2. And that all corresponds to one of these signs here. So B2, so this would be like one sign post with 4 different signs on it, generally smaller signs. So the first one, B2, if you look on the bottom here, it says detour. Okay, the first sign said, oh, there's the detour ahead. The second sign says, attention, if you're looking for the detour, here's your information.
So that's the first sign at the top of the signs
Yes.
on this signpost?
Yes. So they're set in that same order. And then the next sign below it is D2, which is here, which says simply east. So I'm driving south on 29. I'm looking for the detour for East Rio. The next sign below it is P2, which is over here. So it's the route shield, 631. 631 is Rio Road.
Will anyone know that 631 is Rio Road?
Joel, will anyone know?
Joel will. Yes.
We've been through this before, haven't we?
But it has to display the route.
Yeah, I mean, we have certain legal requirements that we have to display the route shield number, not the road, because road names
They will have
change.
seen other things that
Yes.
says Ryle Road and 631. Right?
Yes, yeah. But as far as the actual detour route.
Yeah, the detour.
Because the reason for that is, say if you were taking a right on Rio Road, that also becomes hydraulic road. But it's still 631 around that loop.
So, Phil, one of the reasons I was wanting to look at this again is not just what was on the signs, but the location of the signs, because of just some of the existing traffic conditions now before we even get into this period. And I know in talking with people, because a lot of the traffic, especially in the morning, is heading south on 29.
Mm-hmm.
And in the evening, from all different points, it's wanting to merge back in and go north on 29, be it the Rio westbound as it approaches 29, because like right now the right turn lane, which I know we've talked about a lot of times in the meetings, that there is only one right turn lane to northbound 29 from Rio. That traffic at 5 o'clock, just with normal conditions, is already backed up to Northfield. So it's like, you know, and then the southbound traffic, let's say in the morning, I've been talking to different people, you know, they're trying to figure already now, where do I go, how do I get to wherever, and it's like, they're thinking, oh, well, I need to go ahead and get onto Berkmar to make that, like at Walmart. So it's like, but the detour signs are already way into, and you're like into the intersection before you've got that option. You know, and we've talked about too, people are going to be trying to figure this out, you know, early on, so maybe how it can help them with the placement, not just so much what the messaging on the sign is, but where they are.
So, for instance, Hilton Heights or Woodbrook over to Berkmar isn't really a detour, it's an alternate route.
Okay.
So what is signed as a detour is something that you have to follow this route to get to where you want to go. Now, there are alternate routes for people who know the area, and they're going to say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to come down here, I'm going to make a right on Hilton Heights, I'm going to make a left on Burkhardt, I'm just going to bypass the whole thing. They're familiar with the area, but a detour route should be the shortest, simplest route for people who are not familiar with the
So
area.
there will be no signage that says alternate routes for whomever,
No.
Yeah,
whether they know the area or not, where they get to these deep required.
Could we think about that?
Signing alternate routes? I think we could, but we may just create confusion.
Yeah, we might.
But we can
Then
think
why
about
don't we chat through that?
I think it would be very worthwhile.
Why don't we just chat through it so we don't, I think we should give you a considered opinion about that
They have
and not an
a
immediate
tear-off
opinion.
map to know what the alternate routes are, so
Sure,
to
sure.
get it out there. You know, people coming from Northern Virginia in the summer to UVA or whatever, before they get it mixed with this, it's like, oh, I can maybe go around here and, you know.
Let's let it roll in our head.
So that's the distinction. That's good. That's the distinction
And
of
I didn't realize there was
alternate
on
routes
this
versus
detour,
detour routes.
an alternate route.
And what we're doing with the signal improvements that we talked about before is improving those signal locations on those alternate routes that are not necessarily detours, but we know people are going to use.
Because what the other thing that's in my head is that way back in the beginning, part of the purpose was to develop alternate routes.
Right, because like,
Right?
you know, at Woodbrook.
The parallel
already,
route.
The left turn, just normally, if you're trying to turn left onto Berkmar, is backed up somewhat in that left turn lane, if you're going west, left on Berkmar.
This,
Now we know the traffic is going to be displaced on alternate routes, and so those left turn lanes and lights and signals to help manage that traffic that's been displaced, in addition to just detour signage that is good too.
And I think too that straight north-south traffic is not going to be particularly disrupted, so that's where most of our out-of-town traffic people are going. But there's a fair number of out-of-town people who'll be coming westbound on Rio Road to go north on 29, and south on 29 to go eastbound on Rio Road. So that particular set of turns, I think we're going to have probably more people from elsewhere trying to figure this out
So that's
the first time.
the southbound to eastbound Rio, that's the movement I'm stepping through now.
Yeah.
So they see the detour, and they know, okay, I need to follow this detour. But, so I mean, I can continue does everybody kind of see how this little key works? It's a little overwhelming at first, but it's a lot easier than
You had to
living
take me
through
through
20 or
it.
30
Totally makes
pages
sense. It'll take a while
of
to do
Purpose
the
designed by engineers for engineers, so no question about it. I understood it immediately.
Yeah,
But,
it's really to tell Jason this.
but the better you do a
Where do we
job,
put these signs and what
the
signs?
better you do a job like this, which is very logical, the harder it is to explain to people who are not exposed to it. And I'm going back to what Kristen said before, because, a few months ago, if you had asked me what is State Route 631, you could have shot me and I would not have known. And I still...
I would have asked you.
Very
Henry.
drastic.
Yeah, you missed an opportunity. Nevertheless, is there a possibility that below 631, there would be a nice little sign that says Rio Road? Would that be, would that kill VDOT to add one more sign below or above 631 saying Rio Road?
That's
Even though
amazing.
it's hydraulic, that's way over.
No,
Beyond this,
you're
yeah.
trying to get to Rio Road, but in order to get to Rio Road, you'll be on branch lands and you'll be...
Your Aunt Myrtle said turn left on Rio Road, and suddenly there is no Rio Road. You can't turn left.
Yeah, well, your navigator will tell you turn left, yes. And you have to know that. And so...
Hey, Henry, let us.
Just a thought.
Let us take that. Those actually both thoughts are good ones, because an alternate route is different than a detour. That might serve some value here to us, and you're exactly right. We could have asked you and probably the next 100 people what 631 was and somebody not know it. I'm just thinking, Dave, I'm thinking out loud, kind of looking at Jason here. That's why I've given us the opportunity to go back and consider this a little bit, but I am thinking out loud. We've worked so hard to identify opportunities for the area to keep these businesses working, including Rio plus 29, that it might not, it's worth thinking about. You can put those stickers up. Let's just give it a thought.
Yeah, I have
Let's give it a
lived
thought.
in Charlottesville,
Yeah.
our area, for 36 years almost. And, a few months ago, I had no notion. And the funny part is, the first year I lived off Rio Road.
Yeah, no,
It's a safety thing, because people are trying to figure out, if it's not immediately apparent when they look up, they're going to be trying to, figure it out.
Yeah, and you want to be reassured that you're going where you want to go, which is you want to get on Rio Road because you want to take the Parkway, or your navigator's telling you that. And if you're driving somewhere, kind of convoluted way to, somebody doesn't know what's going on, Branchland and Hillsdale, I would want to be, if I'm out of town, I want to be reassured. I'm going to Rio Road even as I am on some, strange road.
give us a couple days. Well, just a couple days.
You've got till the 20th.
And I
No, we haven't figured it out.
And I understand that we may be asking you to violate some of the sanctified rules, but
I don't.
I think the rule is that we have to have 631 there.
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
there's a law that
Yeah,
says we can't.
yeah, I don't.
leave it on so that your people that work for VDOT know where they are.
My father worked for VDOT for 40 years. He couldn't tell you Rio Road, but he could tell you 630.
Yeah,
He identified every road.
That's the thing, so you can keep those numbers for yourself, for your people, but how about for the rest of us? That's really the idea. Can you add one more sign?
I don't think it'll take us beyond Monday.
Anyway.
I just want to make sure we're giving a considered response and not just only an accommodation.
I know your
response.
system.
Yeah,
I mean, I've
yeah.
been working with you for a while.
Okay.
Dave, I've got one question, but I think Lou's got, did you? Before I did?
I was going to make an observation about where this all comes from, but it's probably too deep in the weeds.
Okay. While you're considering those, I've just got a question, and Karen can probably say very easily whether it's even important or not. We're trying to get people to go around and where we want them to go, but it seems like there's also two spots where we don't want them to go, and that's through the mall and through Albemarle Square.
And through Carswell.
Yeah, and whether something will be, to say no through traffic, no detour, or does it even, or it won't even make a difference?
One, that, and two, that sounds negative. It's like,
Yeah.
Don't come in.
Plus, that's, I think that's asking us to do something that,
It's only private.
if the realm of possibility has limits, it's great to brush up them and maybe even stick 1 foot over. 2 feet get out, you might be in trouble.
So maybe Rio will help on some of that, because then
There
people
is
know
a
what they're
Virginia
doing
law
and they're
that
not.
was passed,
panicking.
whatever, 10,
Yeah, I
15
don't-
years ago, that says you cannot take shortcuts through commercial property to get around, let's say, a traffic light or something like that.
Well,
So
we're hoping that
after
somebody,
they passed the law, I became very careful about not doing it.
we're hoping that if somebody decides to do that, that maybe they stop and do their grocery shopping or stop.
If you get lucky,
I mean, quite honestly.
they see something, they get inspired.
And they'll say, oh, I didn't know that store was here.
It could be helpful, depending on where you are. And I think, especially Albemarle Square, they could use some extra traffic.
I was thinking it was just to eliminate overall frustration, which we talked about, I think, a couple meetings ago, about how the trucks are going to be coming in and out of the construction area, that the lights are going to be changed, that they can go through with that, and that helps eliminate frustration. And then, if they know ahead of time where those alternate routes are, and so like, where do I turn? If it's ahead of it's just right when they get into it, that's what it's thinking too, just make it smooth.
So I've got one somewhat related item. It seems to me invariably, particularly for the first few days the closure goes into effect, there are going to be people coming south or north that arrive at that intersection and they're clueless, they're living under a rock. Oh, this route's closed, they've passed the detour signs, they've ignored those. Has any consideration been given to, is it even possible or reasonable that there could be like a person stationed at the intersection that would be explaining?
Boy,
It seems,
there's some real safety issues.
Right.
There's some real safety issues with doing something like that.
We already have what they call
Panhandlers.
Inform them, tell them what's going on.
Panhandlers
They can become guides.
Panhandlers must know something about the rules too, because today when I was, coming southbound to go to Rio Road, the panhandler was still on the concrete median, despite the fact that now there were 2 lanes between him and the moving traffic. He didn't move over for some reason. So he must know something about the law, but I didn't know.
LED signs on the south.
He didn't move, he was still on the concrete. It was 2 lanes away from the actual traffic.
Yes.
Like on Rio now.
Yeah, the portable changeable message boards. Yeah, they're going to be up further back, alerting people that you're coming into a work zone ahead. Watch for new traffic patterns, slow down, those sorts of things, those messages that alert them before they even get into it, before they get to these detour signs. But I can understand.
I just wonder once those people inevitably get to the intersection and they're just lost
Gonna
and
have to-
befuddled and stressed.
All right.
I was thinking Lou may love to
Not
be out
many
there.
choices.
Waiting to.
No, Lane Corman is going to own that work zone. And frankly, the fewer of us that are out there, the better, quite honestly. And Jason, I'm guessing that you and your folks talk about these situations.
Yeah, those message boards go a long ways. When you come into that work zone, as long as you place them in the right spot to where, they're very visible, they're not off too far and just kind of on your peripheral. You get them out there, people read them, and like at nights when we get the flashing, after 1 or 2 cycles, people understand. They roll through it.
So there'll be additional signs like that beyond just these.
Yeah, that's not assigned to the detour.
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking that might help us a bit with Karen's point that she brought up.
Well, Karen has an interesting point. It's difficult to now figure out how to implement it. Like, let's say I'm coming from downtown Charlottesville and I want to go to, let's say, Wendy's. I would know that I make that right turn. I keep going on Rio till the very end, and then I get to the point where there's a U-turn near Myers Drive, and then I go south and I land at Wendy's. The other way, if I don't know and follow this, I'm going to be on Hillsdale and then on Branchlands, and then I'm going to go up towards Berkman Drive, and then I'm going to go Berkman Drive to Hydraulic Road. No, it's Rio there, Rio West, and then I loop around, make the turn southbound on 29. So yeah, can that be safely signaled, those alternate routes? That's a challenge there.
Well, let us think about what we can do. Let's think about what we can do and can do safely and informative.
Yeah, so I can argue both sides of that.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting challenge. And as you say at the beginning, those of us who live here, we may have the right alternate for our particular trip. It may not be the catch-all.
Yeah.
Detour. Yeah.
And then we're counting on Jason to get out of there much faster than we anticipate.
Oh, yeah. What did you say, June June 15 has everything excavated. That phase, you know, it isn't finished by June 30th, right?
So, like, coming over here today, I was going on 250, and so by the ramp, the people are trying to, in the construction zone, merge from the ramp onto 250. They have a stop sign, and then that one lane, traffic goes heading this way on 250, and I slowed up and let like 4 cars out because it's like they had no chance of getting out. And so that's what made me think of, especially at peak times, that right turn from Rio into 29, because there's nothing stopping that 29 traffic, and they're already backed up on Rio. It's like, what are their chances of getting out safely out there? So what we can think about that and as alternate routes. So.
We have a plan B, a plan C, and working on plan D. Yeah. What we want to do is,
for this particular issue of the backing up all the way to
the Rio westbound to 29 north during the PM peak hour when that backs up
even
to
the AM.
field.
So, I mean, we saw with way back when you did counts that after the Parkway opened, the truck counts in the AM jumped like 30%.
Going the opposite way.
They were in the AM. They were going west on Rio and then north on 29.
North on 29.
Heading up to DC.
That's a result of the
great
Parkway.
reasons. And
Yeah,
that's
right.
29.
But when we really see the queuing, back to the Northfields areas in the PM, but you're right. AM is heavier than before John Moore Parkway.
For some strange reasons, way back when, it always looked like that in the afternoon, you would think that all the traffic was to go north. Large amounts of traffic want to go south on 29 in the PM. That has always happened. And I guess if you look at your numbers, you'll confirm that. So
That's what I do every day. I just do it at 7 or 7:30 at night. Yeah. I mean, anybody who lives west or east or
a
south.
lot of reasons why, for some reason, people wind up going south on 29. You think they're getting away from the city, but no, they're going towards. They're not going into the city proper, but they're going southbound on 29 until they get to the bypass.
Well, there's no question, Morgan, as you pointed out, the first few days, it's going to be a little bit chaotic. We don't want to overreact. We want to kind of see how things are working and then make changes that will actually make things better, because what we see with all construction projects is usually that first week or two, it's chaotic. Everybody figures it out. Things calm down. People learn how to navigate the work zone. So that's.
And then the few new people are the only ones in chaos instead of everybody being in chaos.
The few new people are the ones that are wanting to follow the detour route because they don't quite. Everybody else they're not even going to be looking at the signs anymore. Oh, I go down to Branchlands, I make a left. I go to Hillsdale, make a left, and I get on Rio, and I'm there. So we're going to observe it very carefully. The traffic engineer is going to be out there the first week observing operations so that they can make recommendations on changes as they see fit for implementation.
Dave, this is a very thorough, nicely planned drawing, even if
I can't
feel
take
I have a hard
credit
time
for it.
understanding.
You can pass that on to your,
Mr. Ryan.
let Owen know.
Yeah. Very detailed, very systematic.
Well, we've got 2 good takeaways from that discussion, and that's the consideration of whether or how to sign for alternate routes as opposed to detour, and the addition of the word Rio. We'll be back to you well before the next meeting with some answers there. So thanks for that discussion. Our next meeting will be the 26th. As we talked about last time, we'll meet at 10:30. The secretary does want to come down and have a chat, and I think get some feedback. But it was really important for him to be here. We were hoping that he would be here at this meeting. I've promised Lane Corman that we're not going to let him get in your way, because you'll be a busy bunch of ladies and gentlemen during that time. But appreciate your willingness to move the meeting time for the 26th to 10:30. We'll be right here, and Linda will need to let all the IT folks know about
It's all
the streaming and all that,
Yeah, it's
all that
already
jazz. So that will be a good one. A couple of items under new business that that I wanted to mention is that Lou is into his third printing of the Get Around map, so that's 30,000 of, that will be 30,000 of those that you will have printed. I know you and Chris have been busy visiting all the businesses and responding to requests for people that have, I think, several occasions saw them somewhere and then they want a pad. The long and short of that is that map is being used for the purpose that it was intended, or certainly being distributed for the purpose that it was intended to serve. And I think Lou and you and Chris have done a great job getting around. Getting around with the Get Around map.
We've had some significant assistance from the county, the city. The Convention and Visitors Bureau is doing some distribution to the hotels and the B&Bs and the other properties around. There are maps out at Charlottesville Airport. There at the Visitor Center downtown, City Hall, the county office building. We've visited over 100 businesses.
Rental car agencies.
Excuse me?
Rental car agencies.
No, that's a good.
Yeah, that is a good one. That is the rental car agency.
Going to all the hotels up and down 29, because they'll have out-of-town guests, obviously, during the closure period.
Printing these maps is, relatively speaking, inexpensive. So, if you have more thoughts about places they need to land, let us.
About those maps is that you can study them and come up with your own ultimate route.
Yes.
Yeah. The one I had before, it's very obvious from that map. How to do that.
Okay. Good.
So
Good.
Map is helpful for ultimate.
Good. Well, I know the business assistance subcommittee and everybody who's involved in getting that thing together, in my view, did a heck of a good job. Mark, do you want to just take a few minutes on the noise ordinance?
Oh, okay, yeah. For those who may have seen some of the news articles, I'm not sure they clearly conveyed what we actually did. Just to be clear, the noise ordinance changes the county made did not affect the work for the Route 29 or any other VDOT project in that project area. What we did do was we closed one tiny gap we had in our ordinance where most construction activity is limited to the noise limits between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. And what we did was we said if a contractor is taking material or working outside of that project area, in this case, in this particular case, what they were doing is they had an area where they were disposing of dirt that VDOT had wasted. They have to abide by those same sound regulations as any other contractor would between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. So that's really all we did.
And how will Lane Corman live with that?
It doesn't affect Lane Corman because they're keeping the material within the project area. So it doesn't regulate that for VDOT.
So it's only if it goes from...
If Lane Corman, for example, was going to take the material from the project area and go put it on a piece of property out in the western part of the county, VDOT had said, the dirt's yours, do with it as you wish. Then they would have to dispose of that the same as any other contractor would be required to do so.
In this case, it's going from one VDOT property to another VDOT.
It's all the same project. It's all one project area, so it
This came about
doesn't
as,
affect them.
Off of 2-lane Ryo Road. You probably have seen those two big mounds of dirt that were being purchased from the, actually it was the 29-250 project.
Yeah.
And basically at midnight, late at night, they were hauling that dirt and dumping it, and the noise was fairly disruptive.
See, that's where it's all, that's what triggered it.
Well, that was one, and then there was another case of that happening on another location. People were buying the dirt from the contractors and then doing what they want with it, but that's where the ordinance had a gap, is once it leaves Lane Corman's site, it's no longer their responsibility, but yet these contractors were trying to stay under the VDOT umbrella, and it wasn't legal. So.
But if you live next to Berkmer Extended, you're out of luck.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Now I understand it. I mean,
That's a big.
We had to, or I, speaking for myself, we needed the same explanation, because from reading the news report,
well, I thought these
it
guys
was
were
like,
in
oh my
companies
gosh,
and
we're
you-
in big trouble
It
here.
was a lot of fun for about a half day there. I had some genuine panic going.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
the way I understood it is the contractor could keep working at night as long as he, 24/7, provided he didn't make any noise.
If he could figure out how to stay under the noise limit.
We'll see how he
we're
does
gonna
that.
do that.
We know he excavates everything in a matter of
Minutes.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
How he's going to dump it without any noise, it's interesting.
Well, we have had contractors who tried to do that, and some who, quite frankly, have successfully done that by having what they arranged and how they were doing it, so they did not have to use the backup alarm. They didn't have to back up, and then they've had a rubber gasket on their tailgate, so when they lowered the tailgate wouldn't slam and get this big banging noise. So it is possible if the contractor really wants to do it, but it's the noise. Get the noise down, especially when you're near a residential area. It's just,
That's fortunately only a few homes, I guess, near Berkmer Drive Extended.
that's right.
So you only have a few people complaining.
Any wrap up? Brad? Chris? Karen? Thank you for the conversation around those other issues. Henry?
Nothing other than imprinting in my brain, 6:31.
There will be a quiz. Yeah. Chip? Mark? Kristen? Hey, thank all of you all, and really, thanks for that discussion on that last item. We'll see you May 26th, 10:30.